Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm delighted to be here today with Antonio Nieto-Rodriguez, who was with us last several years ago on episode 189. So, Antonio, welcome back.
Thank you, Will. It's a pleasure to be back, and your Spanish is perfect.
Muchas gracias. So, thank you very much. So, Antonio, you are a leading expert globally on the topic of project management. And you've got a new book out. You have several books. You got a new book out coming out in January, Powered by Projects, Leading Your Organization in the Transformation Age. So I wanted to, hear about that book in this episode, but first maybe give us a quick kind of overview of your background and the work that you've been doing.
Sure, Will. Again, a pleasure being here. I know everybody watches. I followed your interviews, your podcasts here are really, really good. So thank you for having me again. I had like a normal career path, working in PwC for 10 years, then into banking for 7 years, 10 years in pharma. At the same time, in parallel, there was one step in my career that marked me very strong. I got into projects very early in my career, and I thought, wow, projects are so important. And not just one project, but imagine any company managing hundreds of projects. How do you do that? So I was very convinced that this was a core competency for any organization. But at one point, I got faced with some partners in this consulting firm, and they say, Antonio, project management is like very tactical, that we don't care about that. This is something that you find people for $200 per day there on it's not fancy, it's not strategic, it's not something that we can sell. So that I didn't understand, how senior leaders, executives would never give the right weight and appreciation to project management. There's something on the name, project management. It's not like innovation or leadership, or it's tactical, it's engineering, it's IT. So the name doesn't help to get that recognition. And so basically, this is around 20 years ago where I said, I want to change that. I want people recognize that projects are essential and project management is the way to get things done. So that's where my kind of bigger mission started. And I was chairman of PMI, the Project Management Institute, the board member for 6 years. I launched the Brightline Initiative, all towards, and one of my dreams was to get published by Harvard Business Review. There's in leadership management, there is a lot of media, Forbes and Fast Company, but there's one which is a top beyond anyone, which is HBR. And they never publish on project management. The first time I approached them and say, what, project management? This is not for us, Antonio. This is, you get that in CIO or, but not in a fancy strategic forward-thinking outlet. So it was another hit back, and well, it took me a while, but then now I managed to publish my second book in January. So there is like a sense of a mission that I'm trying to accomplish, not just for me, but I'm very close to the project management community across the world. And these are people who work really hard and get really little recognition. So that's the bigger picture.
So tell me about this book, Powered by Projects. What is the kind of the key concept of the book?
So I tell you how I sold it to HBR. Maybe that's the best.
Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, I know you like to give tips. So they like simple things. They like, if you go too far, then it doesn't work. So my first book with HBR and my pitch to convince them, listen, everyone in the world is a project manager, but most of them don't know it. So everybody does projects, but most of them never been trained. They don't know what a project is. By the way, your guide is really, really good. I just saw that a few days ago on project. I don't know what was the name, project management or something like that. But
yeah, we just published thank you, the Busy Consultant's Guide to Project Updates.
Exactly. I got that one, and I love what you do there.
Thank you.
But basically, the pitch was everybody is a project manager, including you editors in HBR. but you don't know it. So let's build, and that's where I wrote this HBR project management handbook. This was in 2019, and they took it as a test because they don't publish fancy kind of books. The more, some manuals is something, and then you have the bigger kind of strategy things that the big names write. So the manual was like, and it was a big success. This book had, I don't know how many, 50, 60,000, 70,000 copies sold worldwide.
Wow.
Translated to Chinese, Polish, French, Spanish. So for them was a big surprise. They said, hey, there might be something here for us. And so that was the first one. Everybody is a project manager. Most don't know it. Here's how you can become a good one. And this one, I turn ideas, as a writer, you need to keep writing, unfortunately, to keep fresh, and you cannot live with just one book. So, and then I realized the theme of this, every organization is project driven, but most leaders don't know it. So is how you can become project driven. So that solved it. That was it. Every organization is project driven. It's not operations driven anymore. That's going to be disrupted, is being disrupted. So what's left is just project. So that's kind of the bigger theme is how can we become a project driven organization to adapt faster, to transform constantly in this never ending changing world. So that's basically the bigger picture of what's coming in my book.
Okay. Let's define terms for a minute. What is a project? How do you define it?
I give you the kind of more classic, maybe academic, a bit boring. There's a start, there's an end, there is an objective. You want to improve something, you want to create something new. You work usually in teams, cross-functional teams. You have a limited budget, you have limited time. So that's kind of the definition. There is a start and change something, you create something, there's an objective, deliverables, and you work as a team. So that's the standard, a bit more boring. The real one, the one I like, is projects are the future. So with the projects, you build the future of your organization, the future of your region, the future of the country, the future of the world. You don't build them with operations. And that's, for me, the bigger message is that everyone working in projects, it has some merit. It's something to be proud. You're building something new. You're building the future of your organization. So be proud, please, because project managers are never proud. So be proud because if you fail, the future of your company is going to be at stake. It's not the operations that will put your company at stake. It's the projects that put your company at stake. So you're building the future through projects. That's the more fancy, that's the most inspirational one.
Okay. So the key objective of your new book, Powered by Projects, is that every organization is project driven. So you should lead and make your organization project driven. Talk to us just to help illustrate what that means. What would you call an organization that is not project driven, and do a little compare and contrast? If I'm looking at an organization that is project driven and an organization that is not project driven, compare and contrast. How are they organized differently? How do they operate differently? What are the reporting? How is that different? Just how are things different?
I like it. Going into details. Very good. So most of the established companies they are operations driven. Operations are at the core. This is how the business is run. This is what people call business as usual or running the business. Some banks call it running the bank. So this is keeping the machine running, and they're at the core, they're at the center. They've been at the center for 100, maybe 150 years. Projects are things that go in parallel. They're never priority. Priority is always your operations. Your KPIs are based on your operations. The finance cycle is based on your operations. Rewards are based on your operations. Everything, it's around your operations. And this is how I think most of the companies still kind of operate kind of heavily, I would say. Then we had this agile mindset, which started with the manifesto 2001. And that changed a bit things. It started to break up a bit the silos, the hierarchies, right? So that was fresh movement to remove that focus on control, on efficiency, hierarchical organizations, broke that a bit the situation and challenged the status quo of organizations. And Agile has been very popular, very successful in the way they started to work in small teams, transversal teams, giving them more power. They could take decisions. But it reached like a limitation. Yeah. Agile organizations are not structured to change all the time. It's small pieces that are good. And so what I'm coming here is flipping a bit to taking this to the next level. So my model is you put the projects at the core. So these are fully dedicated teams. It's a bit like a consulting firm. The teams are fully dedicated. They're transversal. They work together for 9 months or 12 months and then dismantle. There's no hierarchies in a project-driven organization. No hierarchy. There's just 1 or 2 levels. These people are autonomous. They can take decisions. They can stop a project. They can ask for more resources. They're accountable for results, benefits. So it's multi-transversal. There's lots of different resources there. Operations, imagine these are companies that still run operations. It's not like they're just doing consulting. But operations become more second. They're modular. They'll be like, outsourcing and, shared service centers for back office. Now you're seeing shared service centers for front office, which is the sales, the production, the other things. And this becomes more modular and you can, you transform your business, you let go some of your operations, you take some other operations from other parts. So that's the project-driven projects at the core, flipping from operations at the core. And there's a few nice examples like Haier in China, Bayern, the German company, is trying that. There's a few companies who are experimenting with this concept. Haier is the most successful one. I hope it makes sense.
Right. So, like, let's say in a finance organization, a lot of what a finance organization might do on an ongoing basis is operations driven. They're closing the books for the month. They're sending out invoices. They're collecting on invoices. They're paying people, right? And they're closing the books. They're preparing the budget for the next year. They're doing some ongoing routine stuff. And then periodically, they might have a project. Hey, we're going to implement a new ERP system. So we need to do this as a one-off, one-time project, right? Mm-hmm. Or we need to, we're going to change how we are structured. So we're going to go from a business unit based to a geographic units or vice versa, right? So it's like a one-off thing. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. Exactly.
And you're saying bring the project piece of what they do more to the center of attention of the chief financial officer, and the routine stuff that's more at the periphery.
Exactly. That's the periphery of your operations, which nowadays, what you see more and more that operations are being done by AI and robots. So like you were talking about a bank today, in a bank, there's more IT people working in a bank than bankers because the banking is done by machines. So what does the people who are not IT people, they work in projects, they work in agile teams, they work in product development, but they don't run operations. Operations, you don't add too much value. It's just, what's the value that somebody brings doing the same thing all the time? Nothing, zero. So that's kind of the bigger story too, is that the future of work is changing so rapidly. I talk about the project economy, meaning that more and more operations will be disappearing or by humans. They will not need to do that. And so what's left is just projects, transformation, innovation, things that are temporary, right? It's not there forever. So that's another point that leads to those project-driven organizations.
Yeah. So if you have, 10 minutes to talk to a CEO who's saying, hey, I heard about this powered by projects idea and centering projects. I want to be project driven. Yeah, I'll talk to Antonio. What's the kind of core messages that you want to convey to say, here are the things that have to happen to transform from a operations driven to a project driven organization? Like, what are the major work streams or things to think about from a top level perspective?
Sure, maybe, well, let me start with the challenges and then we can look at
Sure.
the common themes, the common challenge, the things that I will share with the CEO or executive team. So based on statistics, still, despite all the learnings and what we've done over 60 years plus Agile Digital, around 70% of the projects fail. AI projects fail even more. I would not call AI projects yet because they're not projects, they're experiments. But anyway, the statistics in AI and projects is very high. So why is it that so many projects fail? Why is it that so many transformation fails? If we know why they fail. We know, you know that. I ask you why projects fail, and you'll make a very good list. But so we know why they fail. We keep failing. There's something really wrong, which this is something that I want to solve, right? So there's three levels that we need to work on. It's first on the organization, the way we organize, the culture of the company, the hierarchies, the prioritization. It's a big challenge. Then you have the role of the leaders. Leaders, you would be amazed, but when I run workshops, is who has been trained on how to be a good sponsor or how to prioritize. Very few, less than 5%, don't know how to sponsor a project. So leaders have a big responsibility in failure of projects. And then the last piece is also project management has to evolve and transformation management has to evolve, have to become more modern. So that's another piece. The role of the project manager has to change completely. So these are the three areas, but common challenges. Most organizations are built for continuous improvement, not continuous transformation. So what's your priority? Continuous improvement. Second, transformation are often applied top down. So the CEO and the corporate team says, hey, guys, all across the world, region there, you need to implement this big ERP, and we're going to do this. Not how it works. If you want change to happen, it's a co-creation exercise. It's not top-down. Top-down works in operations nicely, but not in change. Transformation has to be co-created, has to be done bottom-up. And then another big issue that people will smile when hear, everything is a priority. Right? So if everything is a priority, you leader, you're not doing your job, right? You're paid like crazy, do your job and take decisions, right? Tell me which projects we need to stop. You cannot imagine, Will, I get asked to coach senior leaders, executives, to teach them how to stop projects because they cannot. They feel afraid. So how can you be somebody with 25, 30 years experience and you cannot take the guts and say this project is not a failure, but we stop because we're launching a new one, right? So that's to the level. Leadership is the other big aspect is another big, I just have fun with these things. But when I go to a workshop with senior leaders, I ask them, how often do you launch a new project? And everybody wants to show, well, we launch a project every 2 weeks. We're so innovative. We like change. And okay, and how often do you finish or stop projects? And then they look at each other because they don't know when they finish one project. And they say maybe 6 months, every 3 months. When you launch more projects than you finish, you have a serious problem, right? It's as simple as that because capacity remains the same. You put one more project and then just like a highway which is crowded and you put a new car, you're not going to solve the traffic. You're going to create more traffic, right? So that's something that leaders don't do.
What are your tips on stopping projects? What's the coaching that you provide exactly?
No. Stopping projects should not be seen as a failure first. So it's not a failure. It's like you want to learn piano, you start trying piano and you stop because you move on to do something else, right? But you try. So I think one thing that I coach them is don't see it as a failure. Something that we hear a lot, celebrate the lessons learned from there. One thing that I recommend in the book is when you stop a project, make sure that you have an exit plan for relocation of the people in the project. I wrote an HBR article 3 months ago in April. It was how to stop a project in HBR, and it was the most popular article for a while. So that's what I say. Don't tell people stopping a project, you're out of job. On the contrary, this is the way you can move towards new positions. So that one is appreciated, right? So have meetings where you talk about the projects that you need to stop and see that as an act of courage. This one is also a very nicely way. So another thing that I'd say, Will, more on the transformation approaches is I'm proposing that don't have 3 years projects or transformation. Nobody knows what 3 years will happen. So I always recommend, regardless of the type of projects, just have two type of projects. Projects that are a bit small, 3 months, projects that are a bit longer, 6 months. That's all. Projects of 3 and 6 months, no more, no 9 months, not 12 months, no 18 months, because then the attachment is such bigger. You might have a 3 years transformation, but do it in pieces of 6 months. That allows you to pivot, that allows you to stop, and that allows you to manage your initiatives in a better way. So these are a bit like the suggestions, ideas, which work.
I love this idea of Holly, yeah, we're starting projects all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we never stop them. So we have this increasing inventory of, projects that are in the sort of fuzzy middle phase that are just
exactly.
sort of never finishing.
And Will, what happens there is that sometimes some lead CEOs call me, Antonio, we're a company of 900 employees, but we have 1,200 projects. And so we have more projects than people, and people have to do other things than just projects. So this is crazy.
Talk to me a little bit about how you suggest to a CEO that they manage the whole portfolio of projects. So how can a company, especially if it's one of any size where you have a couple layers, how can you even know what projects exist within your organization? How do you recommend that companies track all these projects so that, because the project might get initiated 2 levels down, the senior leadership may not even have visibility that the project is happening. So how can a company get an inventory of everything that's happening and then manage those and know what potential benefits are coming? What's the total cost of all these projects? What are the risks of all these projects?
So that's when you go into the details. Well, you need to go through this phase where is getting visibility on how many projects we have, where are they? So often, I think most companies don't know how many projects they have, and depends who you ask, they will give you a different number. And we're talking about the thousands of projects. I work in a big bank, more than 3,000 projects easily. So how do you do that? And so you need to go through the inventory. That shouldn't take too much time. You're not looking for all the data, but just make a list of all the projects that are ongoing. Who's the owner? It's also an important. A project without owner, you obviously need to cancel immediately. One of the second step after this is, I'm a firm believer that easily you can cut 50%. So imagine you make a list of 100, you say we need to cut 50. 50 of them, I would stretch it to 70 so that people feel the pressure, but give me the 30 ones that we need to focus. That creates a bit of panic, but we did that in COVID. Remember, Will, I guess you were with your business, but you probably face the same. I'm running so many things, now I need to focus. And what's my focus is going digital, or I work with business schools. They were talking for 10 years to go online. When did it happen when they went online? With COVID. They did it in 1 week. In 1 week, right? Not 10 years, because it was the only project. So when you have just 1 or 2 projects, you get them through much faster. So there needs to be a massive cleanup of projects. And that's where you get the resources. That's where you start getting a better visibility on your budget, your capacity. And the challenge is, of course, choosing those 30 projects that will bring you to the future, to the big wins. Because there's one thing related, Will, that I want to share is that the thing that it's annoying to me, and I'm trying to share in this book, is 95% of the projects, at least in every organization, are incremental improvements. Incremental means it's a bit like continuous improvement, Six Sigma, a bit more. We go for 10% saving, 15% savings, 15%. Why do we do that? Projects should be exponential. It should be, what is the big thing that's going to transform my business? Yeah, you look at Apple, their big project was exponential. It's going into the phone market, right? And then into the, where are these exponential projects? So use projects to think exponentially, to take big bets, not to do incremental things. This is like really terrible. This is what we're used to, terrible. So go for big bets. Go for, I was hearing to Elon Musk, whether you like him or not, but he's thinking that Tesla is more about robots than cars. So interesting, again, thinking big, exponentially. You don't see that in most companies, unfortunately. Sorry, I just go tangentially because there's so many topics that I like.
So in terms of prioritization, you're a big believer on do an inventory of projects and kill a bunch of them. How exactly do you recommend doing an inventory? Do you do a survey and you go to every person in the company and say, other than your day job, list all the projects that you're currently working on? Or how do you do it?
Yeah, you launch an initiative. This is 1 week, okay? You say, people, we're going to have an inventory. So we have this list. Is anything missing? At the end of the week, if your project is not on the list, we consider it canceled, okay? I don't want anyone working on that if you're not in the list, and we're going to check that. So you put pressure. We need to work in small sprints, 1 week. This is the list. Tell us what's wrong, what's missing. If you're not on the list by Monday, you're out.
Okay.
So you need to push like that. And then you'll get always there will be somebody who didn't listen to what you're saying, but normally you get about 95% correct.
And then how do you suggest tracking this? Do you just put it in a Google sheet, or are there sort of different software tools?
There's some people have more advanced tool. We call them PPM tools, project portfolio management tools. If you have, you can use that. They will have a good basis. Microsoft, of course, has Microsoft Project and Project Central, who has also like a depository of projects, or just plain simple Excel sheet, Google sheet. What you want is that people can contribute and put their views on that project, share document. But then, any of these tools will make it.
Okay. And then, so in a project-driven organization, what's your recommendations in the book to leaders on how do they manage all the projects that are under their purview? Should they sort of change how they do their staff meetings or their quarterly reviews or monthly reviews with their team? And, what should they be looking at? Tell us how they should transform that management infrastructure of meetings and reports and updates.
So you try to minimize. You really want to empower the teams. Leaders, one of the challenges today is that they have way too many projects that they have to sponsor. So first of all, sponsoring a project requires time and responsibility, accountability. So one of the things that you make clear in this inventory phase analysis is if you're sponsoring more than 3 projects, you need to remove the rest. You cannot sponsor more. You need to 3 projects, imagine half a day per project. That keeps you already busy almost for 2 days a week. So you cut with that, you choose, and then so you keep narrowing down. You can group projects into programs. So also that helps to have 3 programs rather than 30 projects. So you focus on programs. That's easy. And then basically what you want is one of the the most difficult change in established companies is again, another thing that I don't understand is companies that have 50,000 employees, they still work with part-time people in their projects, even in their transformation. People work 1 day per week, 2 hours per week. So you're leading a transformation with 20 people, but all of them are part-time. You hire external people. The big firms are happy with this because they bring a lot of resources and they help you. But why a company that has 50,000 people cannot give me 20 people? Oh no, they all have daily operations work, and that's difficult to change. So Well, no, no. Here in a project driven, people leave their jobs. People jump into the project. We'll see what happens in 9 months. So one of the things that makes a big difference is you get people working full time in the projects. This is their this is the only activity they do in transformation. So the leader is supporting, is more like a coach, but these people can take decisions. They can play the game. They can prioritize within the project. They have ranges of taking decisions. So by making these structures fully dedicated, that works pretty well. Maybe you've been in consulting as me, and consulting firms, they work like these project-based teams, and they're mostly independent. You have a target, the client tells you what they're looking, and you don't need to have really super control on them like you do today, which just delays them instead of supporting them.
All right. Antonio, for listeners that want to find out more about your practice, about your firm, about your thought leadership, where do you point them online?
They're easy. My name, Antonio Nieto-Rodriguez.com.
All right.
LinkedIn, the same, Antonio Nieto-Rodriguez, they will find me. And there, anything, any advice that they want, just ping me on a message. And I first, any ideas, I love that. Hey, we do that like this, or what you said, we did it different. This is great. And any resources that you want, there's a lot for free. I'm like you, I think knowledge has to be shared. So a lot of things are for free, and yeah, happy to exchange more with anyone interested. This is a topic that resonates with many people.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Antonio. We will include those links in the show notes. It was great speaking with you again. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you, Will. A pleasure.